There is so much to be said for the fine arts. There is so much to be said for the humanities. And if you are a citizen in Palm Beach County, consider your day without those treasures. Consider your day without the arts as we sit here enjoying our lunch in the Kravitz Center, a world-class facility that boasts world-class artistic opportunities to the people of Palm Beach County, the nation, and the world. If we lose the uniqueness of the university and college world by creating such a rush to catch up in the world of STEM education, we will be guilty of losing what universities are all about. You see, it isn't about bringing down other educational opportunities. It is about bringing STEM education forward and creating a better balanced opportunity in both the worlds of STEM and the worlds of the humanities, the arts, and the fine arts. That's what universities should be. And so when people have these loud debates about the issue, what I hear is what I've told my colleagues for a good many years who want people talking about universities. Be careful what you wish for, because when people finally do turn their attention to us in higher education, you will like some of what you hear. Some of what you hear is going to irritate you. But the good news is people have put higher education now front and center, square, to make sure that as we educate these young people from Palm Beach Lakes, that we are indeed ready to pick up those students at the next level, whether it's our community colleges, state colleges, private institutions, or state university system. But it does mean the price. It means having the courage to change the culture. It means having the courage to reach out beyond those ivy-covered walls to the business and industry community, to more of our state leadership, to more of our community-based leadership, to make certain that what we are doing is creating relevance, not just for the students we educate, but for the broader community. You see, a friend of mine once said to me, "Frank, I'm a private sector fella, and you're a public servant. You've been in government for many years in a lot of different roles, and there's one thing I know. In my world, the world of the private sector, when things aren't going well and we are not meeting the bottom line, we go out of business and we're closed. That is accountability." He said, "What I've noticed about government is you never go out of business, no matter how bad it is. Worse, you become less relevant to the people you serve." And I've thought about that for a good many years. Is there anything worse than existing and yet being less relevant to the people you exist to serve? Now, in the middle of this recession, is when we should take stock of what we are and who we are. There are two kinds of businesses that will be available to us after the recession: the quick and the dead. It is critical to us that even we, in the world of higher education, take stock of what we are, who we are, evaluate how we do things, and recognize nothing will ever be the same after the recession. We must come out of this stronger than we went into it. We must take this as an opportunity to do what the private sector does every day during this recession. We must reinvent ourselves. That doesn't mean throw out the genius of higher education, the traditions that make it unique and wonderful. It means taking a good, hard, introspective look at how we marry with our students, our faculty, the business and industry community, and the broader community and the world at large. This is a great time to take that introspective look. So as you read about the great debates that are unfolding right now, know that there's at least one little guy, and Ed, I'm not Lebanese, so we don't know anything about brevity in the Irish Catholic world. We get points for going on and on. But I do know this as I close to take questions. I understand, many understand, that indeed we do not want to miss this opportunity. We want to make certain that indeed these young people have every opportunity to be everything that we know they have the capability of being. We want our state not only be known for agriculture and tourism and just sheer growth because it's such a marvel and people want to be a part of it. Many of us did so many years ago. We've got to maintain that. But I leave you with the commitment. Now is the time to create a knowledge-based economy for Florida. Now, in the throes of the recession, is the time that we have to reinvent ourselves as a state. Not for me, not for us, for them, and for my 7-year-old boy, who I hope and pray someday will not only be educated all the way through university life in the Sunshine State, but what I hope is that after that, he will be able to stay here, marry here, raise his family here, and create the intergenerational genius that states have to have, that comes down to one simple word: roots. And if we can create that kind of a dynamic, what a legacy we can leave to these young people and the young people of Florida who will come after them. So having said all of that, I thank you for the invitation again. I actually think I got it in 20, Sarah, which is rather remarkable in its own right. And now, be glad to try to take some questions.
Frank, we'd like to thank you. I don't think this is working, so I'm going to borrow yours. Sure. We'd like to thank you for coming here today to share your views about the education system. We'd like to present you with a small token of our appreciation.
Thank you. Thank you all.
I think this is working now. Yes? Can you all hear me?
Hold it real close.
Okay. We'll start with some questions from our students from Palm Beach Lakes High School in West Palm Beach. If the student would ask the first question.
Hi, my name is Daniela Valencia. I'm from Palm Beach Lakes in the Teacher Academy. How would you go about improving the communications and alignment between high schools and universities so that students are better prepared for the transition? Do you predict that college entrance requirements will become more rigorous and ambitious?
Got it? And if you don't mind, I hope you don't think I'm rude, I'm going to kind of paraphrase it because I'm not sure how the sound is carrying in here, but the question was basically, how can we create a better confluence between the translation from high school to higher education?
Yes.
Number one, right?
Yes.
And then the second part again?
Do you predict that the college entrance requirements will become more rigorous and ambitious?
Yes, the college entrance requirements, will they become more rigorous? I'll start there. Yes, absolutely. We're running out of seats in higher education, especially in the state university system. I gave you a quick sketch of how we look in our 11 universities. I don't see the day when all 11 of us are at 57,000, and hey, I hope that day never comes. There's nothing wrong with being 57,000 if you can handle it, but many of our universities' footprint just simply won't allow that. So my point there is we're running out of access space. Now, the good news, we have our friends in the Florida college system who have begun to offer baccalaureate degrees as well. I have a bit of a bias. I believe we need to do more of that. But I think it needs to be done in a very focused, strategic way. Not all, and the presidents of the college system will tell you that, not all colleges or state colleges want to be universities. But perhaps there's an opportunity to tap several around the state and grow significantly, not only their associate degree production, but their baccalaureate degree production, much like a state college system, so that we never have to close the door to students who want a higher education degree from one of our institutions. So yes, it is going to continue to become more competitive. I tell high school students, don't wait until your senior year to get serious about this thing. You haven't. Get serious early. Don't leave it to chance, because the competitive process is only going to get more significant. Cost is going to continue to escalate by virtue of the fact that everything goes up in the world of cost, and that puts a greater responsibility on us to make sure that we are more attentive to the bottom line and trying to keep down that tuition cost for students best we can. Last is the issue of the communication. Florida has done, I think, a great deal of legwork over about the last decade to increase high school graduation standards. Quick story to prove the point. When I became Commissioner of Education, and I realize that was a long time ago, I think Andrew Jackson was the territorial governor at that time, if I'm not mistaken. Moses, Ed said. The reality was, it was in 1994. Here's what it took by statute to graduate from a Florida high school. It took a 1.5 grade point average, that's a D+. It took 24 credits, which could have been largely amassed of functional remedial courses. It didn't matter as long as you hit the magic number 24. And you had to pass a high school competency test beginning in 10th grade that was given on about an 8th grade level, and you had 6 shots at it before you had to fish or cut bait before high school was over. And we handed a kid who did those things exactly the same high school diploma that we handed the valedictorian, and thus the same thought that they had just cashed in on their ticket to a great American dream. It was a lie. And we've done a lot over the years to increase standards, change curriculum, etc., and to amass, I think, a greater communication between our high schools and our higher education community, not just for those seeking a degree, but in terms of the Sunshine State standards and what's required to get there, the curriculum that's been developed to make sure that it crosswalks with our Florida college system and with our state university system to make sure that your education is relevant at the next level. Thank you, and great questions.
Thank you.
And final question from the students.
Hi, my name is Joel Ann Smith from Palm Beach Lakes, and I'm representing Teacher Academy. I have a multi-faceted question. In terms of professions, how important is the role of teachers? Do you feel that their salary commensurates with their level of importance? Since many youth consider salary as an important component, how would you encourage students to become educators during this difficult time?
Wow, it was multifaceted, but all good. Fortunately, I'm a teacher, so this will be a little bit easier, I think. You know, when I was an elementary school teacher up the road, taught 5th grade, there were 2 of us on that elementary school campus who were men, me and the phys ed teacher. Still, an unbelievable critical shortage lies within that issue. There are still woefully inadequate numbers of men at every level of education, pre-K through 12, especially in a day and time where more and more of our young people need to be exposed to great male role models. I say that because we're not doing enough yet to reach back to young people and talk to them about education as a career. I know what it pays. My first year in Martin County, I made a whopping $9,075. I remember getting excited because we got a raise that year, and I cashed in then on a 5-figure salary. I was very excited. We went to 10,000 even. It doesn't pay enough, not near enough for the work that our teachers do. I'm anticipating, we'll see, about the changes in law that will require more of our teachers to receive merit pay increases. I hope it works, because there are great teachers out there who ought to be rewarded for the incredible work that they do. I realize it's a contentious issue, but I think if we are going to draw more people into the profession, we're also going to have to recognize that compensation is a big part of every business, and we are an important contributor to what happens in the world. So I think we need to do a better job with compensation. But I would level this charge at the students who are in the room today, and I'm probably preaching to the choir. You all are looking at careers in education. You drank the Kool-Aid, and I'm glad you did. I wanted to be a teacher from the time I was in middle school, believe it or not. It was the only thing I ever wanted to do. I was one of 6 kids, and I'm the only one that was able to get a college degree because I was the one in the family who wanted, they called me Teach. I was the one who wanted to be the teacher. And so I went for that college degree and never looked back. Being in and around education is a lifelong dream, and it has been a lifelong passion ever since. And I've never regretted my move to education. But I know how tough it is out there with high school students. When you look at your peers in other high schools and say, why don't you be a teacher? I know what the answer usually is after the laughter dies down. But you know, if we who are in education don't try to recruit others who are not to it, worse. If we who are in education spend our time talking about the terrible discipline and the low wages that people make, young people are very smart. They will make up their mind very early on that they may want to do a lot of things. Education won't be one of them. We've got a job to do. We've got to remind people where we'd be without teachers, and we need to sell that to young people every single day so that we can be blessed to find some of the best and brightest, to go in those classrooms and go in those laboratories and lead the charge to the educational offering. Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you.
And now some questions from our audience. Speaking of teachers, how would you describe your relationship with the Florida Teachers Union?
Gee, it's gotten better over the years. You know, it was pretty contentious years ago, especially when I was running for office. You see, in Martin County, the job of superintendent of schools is an elected position. And the job at the time of education commissioner in the state, a cabinet post, was an elected position. Well, you don't get those jobs, or at least you didn't at the time, without running for those jobs. And the teachers union and I oftentimes found ourselves on different sides of the endorsement ledger. That's okay. I'm never a bridge burner, and I always forgive people their sins. It's what we're supposed to do. But at the end of the day, you know, and I read it regularly in the newspaper, and by the way, we have a faculty union in the university system, so some things never change. But you know, when I sit down and talk to education leaders, whether they're educators in the classroom or whether they're union leaders, higher ed, K through 12, pre-K through 12, they all want the good things that we all want. A lot of times it is on how we go after those public policy initiatives or the rhetoric that we all use when we're fighting the great fight. But at the end of the day, I have always said, if people want what I want, and I don't mean what Frank Brogan wants, I mean what we should all want for children, for teachers, for education at all levels, they're okay with me. And I've made a living at it, both personally and professionally, as well as politically. And have a pretty good reputation out there in that regard. I don't mean that out of arrogance. We should all want that, to be a bridge builder. So that's what I've tried to do in that regard.
Thank you. A timely topic for you that's been in the news. As a result of the recent hazing death of a Florida A&M band student, that university is taking reactive steps. What steps should the state's Board of Governors take to stamp out hazing at all Florida public universities, and how do you convince students that hazing is not a rite of passage, but rather abuse that should be reported?
Let's get one thing straight. The kind of hazing we're talking about, and I'm not saying there's good hazing, but the kind of hazing we're talking about at every level, fraternities, sororities, not just in Florida, but around the nation. This isn't hazing. Stereotypical hazing is to crush some eggs in somebody's pants, take them out in the cornfield, and let them find their own way back to campus. Okay, those are the old days of hazing, wearing the silly hat as a freshman student when you're rushing the fraternity or sorority. Folks, this hazing is synonymous with bullying, abuse, physical attack, and assault. And I don't mean just at Florida A&M University. I mean wherever it exists. There are horrific examples of this every single year. Many people don't notice them because they're not as attuned to the world of higher education as those of us who are charged with it. But at the end of the day, there are young people who die as a result of hazing far too frequently, and one is far too frequently. There are young people who are beaten and assaulted and hospitalized as a result of that word hazing. The first thing we all need to do is change the rhetoric. Hazing is not acceptable, because even if you accept the stereotypical hazing, you are creating a platform for the hybrid, which is a tragedy, in some cases a crime. I used to say this, and I still say it, and some of my colleagues get a little nervous when I do. I've been in education all my life. Contrary to the myth, our first job in education is not teaching and learning. Can you believe the Chancellor of the State University System just said that? Folks, our first priority is the health, safety, and welfare of every person who visits, works, or attends any of our institutions of education. From an elementary school to the greatest university you can consider, if we do not operate safe, disciplined institutions, how can people teach and learn? Because you cannot teach and you cannot learn in an unsafe and undisciplined environment. The Board of Governors has charged me with leading an investigation, in this case at Florida A&M University. I obviously can't say too much about it because it is an investigation, not only ours, but the criminal investigation through law enforcement. And what we're all looking at is making sure that we appropriately address this issue at the end of the day. Who's responsible for that? And are people carrying out that incredibly important charge? And at the end of the day, we have a broader responsibility, all of us, and I throw the net over you in this room. We've got to stop this. If it is so ingrained as to be dubbed cultural, the work will be much harder. It is always harder to stop something that is not an ingrained part of the fabric. When we raise our children, it's always easier to stop something as soon as it starts than to allow it to become over time, because of neglect or benign neglect, a part of the family culture, and then find it too late because it is deeply rooted. This thing on a national scale, I'm afraid to report to you, has become in many ways deeply rooted. But that only raises not only the stakes, but the responsibility. We've got to stop this. I want to make sure as Chancellor, and I know the people in our system want to make sure, that those beautiful young people walk onto one of our campuses next year for the seniors and in 2 years for the juniors. By the way, the seniors are at that table. The juniors were forced over to that table. They said it was okay. They're closer to the desserts. If we don't provide them a safe and disciplined environment, all the educational opportunities that are going to change their lives for the better will pale. And so this is a high-stakes obligation that we've taken on here, not just to check out what happened, but also to stamp it out forever, and not just at Florida A&M University, but everywhere young people come together in the name of education.